Oyimafu Emmanuel. I'm a modern workplace solution engineer, and also I'm a cloud engineer also, and I work for Hashem Limited. So before I start, I want to especially appreciate the Ninja Security User Group for this opportunity to be the speaker for today's section. I'm going to be talking about plan and implement security for storage. So in this section, we are going to learn how to configure storage account, not just how to configure storage account, but how to implement security for storage accounts. So I want to welcome everyone to the Nigerian security community. If you are not in our community group chat, kindly just signify on the chat. So we are going to actually add you to the group chat or drop the group invite so you can join the group. Yeah, let's go. So if you have any question at any time, you could just raise your hand. So I'll just call on you. So today, this is my headline for today. So I'll be talking about Azure storage. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to define Azure storage. Then I'm going to show us how we can configure access control for storage account. And also I'm going to show us how we can manage storage account access keys. Then I'm going to tell us how we can configure appropriate method for accessing files, Azure file, and how we can select and configure appropriate method for access to Azure blob. I'm also going to talk about select and configure an appropriate method for accessing Azure tables. And I'm also going to talk about authorized access to queue data in the Azure portal. And we are going to look at various data protection for storage account, just like our moderator said, Steve, if we are going to look at how we can safeguard data. And we're going to look at bring your own key specifications in terms of creating a storage account. And now we're going to see how we can enable infrastructure encryption for double encryption of data. So let's go. Yeah. I think the mix up somewhere. Okay. Okay. So this brings us to the first topic, Azure storage account. Azure Storage Platform is a managed cloud solution for modern data storage scenarios. So Azure Storage offers highly available, massively scalable, and durable and secure storage for a variety of data objects in the cloud. So Azure Storage objects are accessible from anywhere in the world. So Azure Storage offers several benefits. One, it is durable and highly available. So its redundancy ensures that your data is safe in the event of transient hardware failures. So imagine a situation where you are hosting your data in your maybe local storage and there is maybe downtime in power. Maybe there is no supply or so, meaning that your users are not going to access those data at that time. But with Azure Storage, it offers durability, scalability, and also secure cloud storage for diverse objects. And also, it's secure. It is secure. All data written to Azure storage is encrypted by the service. So it provides fine-grained control over who has access to the data. So with Azure storage, you can use what we call role-based access control to define the access any user in your organization can have to your storage account or even your log file. For scalability, Azure storage is designed to be massively scalable to meet the data storage and performance needs of today's application. So if you are building applications that are, let's say, that needs to be highly available, with Azure storage account, you can actually meet that need. So with Azure managed storage account, what it means is that Microsoft is managing and handling the hardware infrastructure for you. You don't need to focus on the hardware infrastructure. Microsoft is doing the job for you. More or less like some of us where our organization have what we call file server. So in the file server, you can create shares in such a way that you can define permissions to users to those shares so that if maybe the person is in IT department now, you can create a folder for IT department and share that folder so that every member of IT department will have access to that particular folder. But in Azure now, Microsoft is giving you that platform. So you can create file share. The management and everything is on Microsoft, it's not on you. But if you are using the traditional file server system, you'll be the one handling the management and everything for that server. So now let's look at Azure Data Services. So if we're talking about Azure Data Service now, we are familiar with different Azure data storage, such as blob, files, and queue, and also table. So for blobs is massively scalable object, and it is used to store unstructured data. An example of an unstructured data is pictures, videos, audios. Those are unstructured data. While we have Azure files. So Azure files just work like your managed file share in your local environment, whereby you can just create share and delegate the permission to users in your environment. So for those of us in the meeting, can you just take a screenshot of the meeting and just share to the community to let them know that we have started the event? Thank you. Then we have Azure Queue. So Azure Queue is a messaging store for reliable messaging between application components.
Please, you are not sharing your screen. You cannot. I can't see anything. I don't know for others.
Okay. And can anyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I can see your screen as well.
okay. So if you're not seeing my screen, kindly leave the meeting and rejoin. Please, just for the sake of the so just leave the meeting and rejoin. Okay. So for table storage, so table storage is used to store structured data like your SQL Server. So we also have Azure Managed Disks. So these Azure Managed Disks are block level storage volumes for Azure VMs. Just like you can attach an external disk, you can also attach a Azure Managed Disk to your virtual machine. So you can also use Azure Container Storage for management and deployment and orchestration service. We are going to go to the next page. Yeah, so let me just go. So this brings us to how we can configure access control for storage account. So during the demonstration, I'm going to explain all these scenarios. So we are going to understand how we can delegate access to storage account. So basically, we have Azure Blobs, Azure Files SMB, Azure Files REST, and Azure Queues and Azure TV. So all these are storage mediums in storage account that you can use to store your file. So for Azure Blobs, the title says, we want to configure secure access to storage account. So all these are components of a storage account or storage components in Azure storage account. So basically, Azure Blob, if you want to use storage accounts shared, it is supported for Azure Blob. Also, for shared access signature, it is also supported. So the difference between storage account key and shared access signature is this storage account key now is more or less like the how will I even put it? It's like the key to the entire storage account. So with this key, you have full access to the storage account. You have full access to the storage account because in creating a storage account, it normally creates an identity. So that identity is created when you create a storage account and it has a password. So normally there are two keys. So once you use those keys to access your storage account, you have full access to the storage account. But for shared access signature, you can you can actually describe the kind of access you want the user to have. You can come up with more granular permission for the access that you want the person to have. It also supports Microsoft Entra ID. It also supports Microsoft Entra ID, and but it doesn't support Active Directory Domain Services, which is on-premise AD, and it supports anonymous read access. So what this means is that for Blob now, if you want to access Blob publicly, securely, you can use storage access key. So with this key, you have full access to the Blob storage. But with shared access signature, you can define access to the Blob storage based on time. You can specify time and you can list privileges that the user will have. Either the person will be able to read, list, or delete. So you can specify that, which when we get to the lab, we're going to understand all this properly. Then you can use Microsoft Entra ID. So Microsoft Entra ID now is a cloud-based identity management system. So you can use it to actually authenticate to your blob storage, which we are going to see how it works. And you can use Active Directory domain services, which is the local on-prem Active Directory. So you can use this. And also you can configure anonymous public access for blob storage. But for Azure Files, it supports shared access signature, but it does not, it supports storage account shared key, but it does not support shared access signature. Let's take note of this. For those of us that are preparing for the exam, these are questions that could come out. So for Microsoft Entra ID now, it's supported only with Microsoft Entra domain service. So this Microsoft Entra domain services now is more or less like the managed domain service for that is more or less like Active Directory domain service. But this Active Directory domain services now, you're the one that is actually controlling it. You're the one managing it. But for Microsoft Entra domain services, as it is, Microsoft is managing this particular service for you. So if you want to use Microsoft Entra domain service, it's actually a platform as a service in Azure, whereby you don't need to have a local server where you add AWS. Microsoft will just create your Microsoft Entra domain services that will represent your domain, whereby you can grant permission. So for that, Azure Files supports Microsoft Entra ID, and it also supports Active Directory domain services. So for Active Directory domain services to be supported, the identity must be synced to Microsoft Entra ID. Of course, if you want to sync identity to Microsoft Entra ID, you have to install Microsoft Entra Connect. So for Microsoft Entra Connect, it's a tool that you can use to sync users from on-premise Active Directory to the cloud, but it doesn't support anonymous public access. That's for Azure Files Assembly, which we are going to cover when we start the lab. So for Azure File REST, it supports storage account shared key. It also supports shared access signature, but it does not support Microsoft Entra ID. So I can see Jennifer is raising her hands up. So if you have any question, please drop the question on the chat. Just drop the question on the chat. And it does not support Active Directory domain services. And it also does not support anonymous public read access. So all these things, we need to know what each of these storage support, the authentication, the authorization method, each of these storage support. All these are authorization methods. So for shared access key, you can configure it on the storage account or on the service. While for storage account shared key, this one is more or less like, I'm going to show you the storage account shared key, like is more or less like the key to the entire storage account. Then the next one is Azure Keys. Azure Keys support storage account shared keys, and it also supports shared access signature. So for Microsoft Entra ID, it is also supported, but it does not support Active Directory domain services and anonymous public read access. While for table storage, it supports storage account shared key, it supports shared access signature, it supports Microsoft Entra ID, but it does not support Active Directory, meaning it doesn't support local Active Directory, and it doesn't support read access. So if we look at these storage services, so the only storage services that support anonymous read public access is blob storage. So let's take note of that only blob storage supports anonymous public read access. But the remaining storage medium, which is Azure Files, both SMB and REST, doesn't support anonymous public access. Same with Azure Queues and Azure Table. So this brings us to the next slide, which we are going to look at how we can manage storage account access keys. So basically, if you want to manage your storage account keys, you need a key vault. We are going to see how we can create a key vault and how we can configure a key vault to manage access to our storage account. So basically, you use key vault for key management. So a vault normally is more or less like we can see on the screen. You can see what we have here. So this is a vault. So something that looks like a vault is something that is hardened in such a way that even fire, water, or anything cannot penetrate it. If fire or water cannot penetrate it, meaning it's highly secured. The only way you can access this particular vault is if you have the key. So basically, as it is here, for key management, we use Azure Key Vault. So Azure Key Vault is used to store keys, not just only keys. You could also use it to store certificates, and you could use it to store even backup and other sensitive files that the organization uses for their day-to-day activities. So you can also enhance authorization level from Microsoft Entra ID with managed identities for superior security over shared keys. So basically now you can create a managed identity in Microsoft Entra ID. Of course, with managed identities, you can actually use role-based access control to give access to that managed identity which we are going to look at configuring managed identities and using managed identity for secure access to our key vault. So the next one brings us to key rotation and monitoring. So if you want to be using maybe this Azure vault, so it's good because you can regularly rotate keys and set expiration policy and monitor compliance using Azure policy. So if you are using the Azure ecosystem, with Azure policy, you can create policies that will let you know the compliance level of the resources you have in your Azure environment. Basically now, if you create Azure policy and any of your key is not maybe being rotated the way you want it to rotate, at the end of the day, you can just relegate, or basically you will know then you'll go and rotate the keys. So for key rotation, let's see, like I made mention of the shared access key. So the shared access key is more or less like the key to the kingdom. It's the key to the entire storage account. So basically, as it is, if someone have access to your storage account using the shared access key, automatically when you rotate the key, the person will not have access to that storage account again. You need to actually give the person the new key for the person to have access, which we are going to look at in the course of the demonstration. So now let's look at select and configure an appropriate method for accessing Azure files. So if you want to access Azure files supports identity-based authentication for Windows file share over server message block, and through the following method. You can only use one method per storage account. If you want to configure authentication for your file share, you could either use any of these three methods. So these are the three methods you can use. The first method is on-premise ADDS. Like we all know, on-premise ADDS is a domain controller that is managed by the customer, more or less like it is on-prem. You manage it in your own premises, in your own environment, you manage it. So in this method now, the way it is, this Windows machine can access Azure file shares with on-premise AD credential synced to Microsoft Entra ID over SMB. So for you to have sync credentials, you need a Microsoft Entra domain. You need to install Microsoft Entra Connect in your environment for it to sync users to the cloud. And also the devices that we connect to that file share. Let's take note of this, must either be ADDS joined or Microsoft Entra domain service joined. So the devices has to either join the local Active Directory or join the Microsoft Entra domain service joined. So it has to belong to either the local ADDS or the Microsoft Entra domain services, which is the managed one. That is a platform as a service that Microsoft is offering. Then the next one is Microsoft Entra domain service authentication. So in this method, cloud-based Microsoft Entra domain services join Windows VM can access Azure file share with Microsoft Entra ID. So basically, the way you can join systems to local Active Directory, you can also join client systems to Microsoft Entra domain services. So if a system is joined to Microsoft Entra domain services, automatically the user will be able to access the file share. If you try to connect the file share to the system, the person will it will authenticate and the person will have access to the file share. I know all these things might look like maybe, but when we get to the demonstration, it's going to make more sense to us. So the next one is Microsoft Entra Keyboard for hybrid identities. So in this method, Azure file shares are accessed over the internet without requiring a line of sight to the domain controller from hybrid Microsoft Entra ID join or Microsoft Entra ID join VM. So with this one, what it means is that Azure the files can be accessed over the internet without requiring a line of sight to domain controllers or from hybrid Microsoft Entra joint device. So even if there's no connectivity between the PC at that time to the domain controller, you'll still be able to add that file share to that PC. That's for Microsoft Entra cables for hybrid identities. So there's one thing we need to note here. Azure files support the NTFS protocol supporting Linux. I know somebody wants to ask, can you mount a file share on a Linux VM? Yes, you can. You can mount a file share on a Linux VM. Okay. So now let's look at how we can select and configure appropriate methods for access to Azure Blob Storage. We are going to create a blob storage today, and we are going to see all this in action. So basically now, in a blob storage, you can switch to Microsoft Entra user account for authentication method. So if you want to switch, once you just click on this switch to Microsoft Entra user account, you will switch. So here now, you can access blob data via Azure portal using Microsoft Entra account or storage account key. So if you have the storage account key, like I made mention of, which is the key to the kingdom, the key to the storage account, basically you have full access to the storage account. And also you can use permissions through role-based access control. So maybe for instance now, you just want somebody to have access to only the blob. So you can just specify a role that can give that person access to only the blob. That's if you want to use Azure role-based access control. And you can also switch authentication method or specify authorization for blob upload. So you can switch. You can decide to switch from access key to Microsoft Entra user account. So like we made mention, with access key, you have full permission. But if you want to switch to role-based access control now, meaning that you won't have full permission, except if the role that was given to you gives you full permission to the container. So now this brings us to select and configure an appropriate method for accessing Azure tables. So if you want to access Azure tables, remember the following consideration while configuring access to Azure tables. So these are the considerations that we need to note of. So accessing a table resource involves two-step process in Microsoft Entra ID. So the first method is authentication of the security principal identity to get an OAuth token, and also using the token for authorizing access through the table services. So these are the two processes involved in accessing table. So the next one is for authentication. Application running with Azure entities, such as Azure VMs and functions, can utilize a managed identity to request an OAuth 2.0 access token. So basically, if you want to access Azure table, you can create a policy and define the policy, give the policy maybe the access you want the person that wants to access it to have, the administrator to have. You can say, okay, I want this person to have only read, or you want this person based on rules, just like we have here. So you can dictate the permission the principal possesses for the table data access, which we are going to look at all this in our demonstration. So now let's look at data protection in storage account. So basically, data protection is something that is very important and cannot be overemphasized. So basically, there are recommendations for basic data protection. From here now, we are going to look at setting up Azure Resource Manager lock to avoid deletion or changes. So if you set up Azure Resource Manager lock on either the storage account itself, meaning that if somebody tried to delete that storage account, it will prevent the person from deleting the storage account. So all these are important in terms of data protection of a storage account. And also, you can activate container soft delete for recovery of deleted items. There is soft delete and there is hard delete. If we say soft delete, it means that you can still recover it. But if we say hard delete, it means that it is gone. Hard delete means it is gone forever. It is gone. But soft delete, you can still recover it. So we can activate container soft delete so that should in case maybe you have an administrator and the person just deletes maybe a container file or something, we'll still be able to recover it. And also we can use preserving blob state. We can use blob state preservation. So you can configure your storage account to be immutable. Like when we say something is immutable, it means it is unchangeable. It cannot be changed. So you can create your blobs to be immutable in such a way that if somebody wants to delete anything, it will stop the person from deleting. And aside that, you can't change. You can only like modify. And even if you modify it, it still saves the previous copy for you. So meaning that in 10 years' time, if you want that other copy, you can always get it because you have enabled immutability for the storage account, which we are going to see how we can configure that for storage account. And also we can utilize manual snapshots for data milestone. So we're going to see all this. So aside these settings here, you can also use snapshots, just like we all know. Taking a snapshot of a machine means that you are taking a picture of the settings and all the configuration at that time. You can use snapshots in such a way that if somebody deletes any blob or storage, you can always revert back to the snapshot to get it. So we are getting to the end of our slide so that we can go to the practical, which is the real time. So now we are now looking at bring your own key specification. So when we say bring your own key, now it's more or less like you have your own key vault and you want to actually encrypt your storage account. And the encryption method you want to use, you don't want to use Microsoft keys. You want to bring your own keys. You don't want to use Microsoft managed keys. You want to bring your own keys. Then the good news is that it is supported for storage accounts. It gives you the opportunity to bring your own key specification. So let's look at this scenario. A key vault customer would like to securely transfer a key from their on-premise HSM outside Azure into HSM backing Azure Key Vault. So basically, these are the process the person will follow to actually bring his keys. So the first process is generate key exchange key using the Azure Key Vault key create command. So for you to use your own key, you need to generate the key exchange key. Then after generating the key exchange key, you need to retrieve the public key of the key exchange key. And also, after retrieving the public key, first thing, generate the public key. After generating the public key, you retrieve the public key of the key and of the exchange key of the key exchange key. And also, you will now generate key transfer block using hardware security module. So this one now, the vendor will provide their own, bring your own key tree. So that with their own tree, you can use it to generate transfer block using hardware security module. Then the fourth option is upload your key transfer block to import HSM key. We are going to see how we can use our Microsoft managed keys, but for us to use customer managed keys, I don't have any key, any customer man. I don't have any key basically that I can use for the test. Else would have been able to practice it. So now let's look at how to enable infrastructure encryption for double encryption of data. So basically, Azure storage encryption, you can use 256-bit AES and FIPS 140 compliant optional infrastructure level for double encryption. So what this means is that you can encrypt both the storage account infrastructure and the storage containers itself, also the files. So double encryption means that you are double safe. So if anything happens from any level, you are safe. While for infrastructure encryption, it encrypts data twice with distinct algorithm and keys applicable to entire storage account for specific scopes. So you can define scopes for this infrastructure encryption. So for key management now, so this is a service level support that support both Microsoft and customer managed keys. So you could use any of them. Now we are going to go to the lab. So before we go to the lab, does anybody have any question? I'll just stop sharing while I set up my lab. If you have any question, you can ask before I actually start the demonstration. Yeah. So I think there's no question, so I can just go ahead and and start the demonstration proper. So I'll be sharing my screen again. So I'll just bring this meeting to this end so I can see what's going on. Okay. I can see someone dropped a question on the chat. Okay, you have a question. So Jennifer, share your question. Share your question. So let me share my screen. Share and screen. Okay. So this brings us to Azure portal. So I'm going to sign into Azure again. So for some of us that are just joining for the first time, we'll know the portal that we can use to access Azure. So basically, if you want to access Azure, you go to portal.azure.com to access your Azure subscription. So basically, because I'm already signed in, so it don't ask me for username and password. But if I'm not signed in, it will ask me for username and password. So basically now, this is my own Azure portal. And today, we're talking about storage account. So I spent my time to explain all those things in the slide so that during the presentation, it will be easier for us to understand the concepts and all it takes to manage and secure a storage account. So basically, I'm going to click on storage account because I want to create a storage account. But in your own environment, if you don't have a storage account, you can just click on search, type storage, then you see storage account, then you click on storage account. So in this case, I'm going to click on create so I can create a new storage account. So basically, these are the basic settings to create a storage account. Of course, you will need a resource group to create your storage account. So I'm going to be creating the new resource group. I'm going to call this resource group Ninja Security RG. So I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to give my storage account a name. So I'm just going to call my storage account Ninja Storage Security RG. So it's complaining of uppercase. So I'm going to remove this uppercase, just call it Ninja. So basically, if you are creating a storage account, you need to know that a storage account has to be globally unique. The name has to be globally unique. So if you use a name that someone has used before, it won't allow you to create. And also for location, you could select West Europe or any other region that is closer to you. I know some of us on this call can be joining from maybe US or different countries. So just select any region that is closest to you. So now for the performance, you could select standard or premium. But for my own case, I'll just go for standard. So I'll just click on review and create. Then I'll show us something after creating the storage account. So we'll just see how we can play through this storage account and see how it works. So let's wait for the storage account to validate. Just wait for it to validate. So I'll just click on create to create the storage account. So it won't take much time. So it's going to create. So we can click on the notification bell here to watch the deployment. So I can just click on it so we can observe it together. So you can drop your question. So if you have any question, you can just drop your question in the chat. So the deployment is in progress. So we'll just observe the deployment to observe it to deploy. Deployment is in progress. Let's just wait for it to deploy. Meanwhile, Jennifer, you can drop your question. Can this material be available? Yeah, it will be made available. Thank you, Steve, for that response. To be made available, I'll share. If you are not in the security user group, kindly tell us so we can add you to the group because the material is going to be shared in that group. Now, I'm going to go to deployment. The deployment has complete. I'll click on go to resource. which is the resource I just created. And the name of our storage account is Ninja Storage Security RG. So basically, I want us to see something. So if I come down to configuration here, so we can see all the configurations that we have for our storage account, which I'm going to talk about later, but I don't just want us to look at it right now, but I'm going to talk about it. Okay, so now let's go to the data storage. So just like we're explaining from the slide, we have containers here. This one is used to store unstructured data like pictures and all. Then file share, this is the one that supports SMB. Queues is the one used to store messages. Then table is the one used to store structured data. So let's start with block storage. Let's see how we can create secure access to block storage. So basically, we have a default container called logs, but we are going to create a new container here. So I'm going to click on add a container. So I'll call this container, let me call it security user. So it's giving me error because I used uppercase. So let's just take notes. So I'll now click on create. So once I click on create, it automatically creates security user for me. So basically, if you want to delegate access to this particular container now that I just created, if you click on the container itself, so you can add directory to the container, like you can add more directory. So if I click on add directory now, I can just say, okay, let me say infosec directory. So I can click OK here. So automatically I've created infosec directory under that container. So if I go back now to the container and I click on security user, so under security user now, if we refresh, we'll see the directory we created. But basically now, I want us to upload a file to this container, this security user. So let me click on container again. I just want us to get it. So let me upload a file to this container. So from the presentation, we can see here, you can switch from access key to switch to Microsoft Entra user account. But in this case, I will use the access key for now. Later on, we are going to switch, but I just want us to see that it's still the same thing in real life. So let me even show us what access key looks like. So let me come back to the storage account. So you could just go to the storage account itself. This was the storage account we created, Ninja Storage Security. So I'll click on it. If I come down to security and networking, if I click on access keys, so from access keys here, I'm going to see the shared access keys. So these are the shared access keys. So this shared access key now, what it is that if I click on show, you are going to see the key. So basically, this is the name, like I made mention the other time. So if you are creating a storage account, it automatically gives the storage account a name, the name of the storage account you gives it, then it generates password. So basically now, this is not the safest way of accessing storage. Accessing storage account using the access key is not safe because this key can easily leak. And if anybody have access to this key, it means that the person have access to the entire storage account. So basically, it's best practice you use shared access signatures to give access to your storage account. So now we have seen the access keys and how it looks like. So there are two access keys. So once you rotate your key, there are some things that will happen because in defining access to a shared access signature, it requires access key. So automatically, all the users that have access to the storage account using that shared access key, their access will be revoked if you rotate this key. So we are going to see that in action when we do our demonstration. Let's go to the container. So from container here now, I want us to observe something from the container. So if I click on this security user, let me upload a file. So I'll just upload, I'll click on browse, then I'll select any file I want to upload. Let me just select this Azure storage and click on upload. So basically, I've uploaded this Azure storage image to the storage account. So let me upload something else. Let me click on upload. So I can upload something else. I don't have any audio file that is not so heavy. I would have uploaded it. All these videos are very, very heavy. So let me upload this image and click on upload. So right now I've uploaded two images to the container. So as it is now, I want us to access this particular container. So basically, if you click on access and access control here, you can use role-based access control to grant access to this particular container after the user have authenticated to Azure. So basically, you can just click on add role assignment. So from add role assignments, we can see job functions. But basically, what we are seeing here is all the roles, which we are supposed to be specific on the roles we want. So let's just type blob so that we'll see all the roles that are for blob. So wait for it to load. Okay, so we can see blob stop. We can see storage blob data contributor. So anybody that have this role now, automatically, it allows for read, write, and delete access to the Azure storage blob container data. So anybody that have this contributor role now has all these rights. This is what the person can do. So now we are going to, if we are going to use this blob data contributor, because if you give the person a blob data owner role, automatically it allows for full access to the storage blob container. So basically now, let's say you want to define access, secure access to your container or your blob. So these are the ways you can securely access your blob. Maybe for instance, you employ someone to your organization and the person is just a storage administrator. He wants to manage your storage account. So you don't need to give the person owner to the subscription. You can just give the person storage blob data contributor so that the only thing the person will have to the storage account is just read, write, and delete access to the Azure storage blob container and data. So you could define any permission that you want. So if I click on data contributor now and I say next, you can either grant the permission to user group or service principal, or you could use manage identity, which we are going to explore. But I'm going to select a member in my organization to give that role. So here, I'm going to be selecting myself. I'm going to be selecting this and give that role to myself. So I'll click on next, then I'll click on review and assign. So we'll just wait for the role to be added. So that is how to delegate access to a container using role-based access control. So now let's come down to the storage account itself now. So here now, this is the storage account. If I click on overview, you are going to see the overview of the storage account. So if we come down, you will see the data storage, which is container. Right now we're in container. We have not gotten to files, queues, or table. So now let's grant access to our blob, to our container using shared access signature. So I'm going to click on shared access signature. So let's note, shared access signature is under security and networking. So if I click on shared access signature now, we can see from the definition here, a shared access signature is a URI that grants restricted access right to storage, to Azure storage resources. So if you are using shared access signature, you can use shared access signature from the storage account level and from the resource level. So this shared access signature now that we're actually configuring here is from the storage account level. That is why it's giving us access to select all the services. But in this case, we are only working with log for now. We are not working with files. So I will uncheck files, I will uncheck queues, and I will uncheck table. So if I uncheck all this, I will now select for allowed resource type. I will select service, I will select container, and I will select object so that I will have access to the service itself, which is the blob, and I will have access to the container in the blob, and I will also have access to the object in the blob. So if basically now you want the person that will use the shared access key to only have access to, let's say, the container, you don't want him to have access to the object, you uncheck object. That is granularity in, that is when you are making the permission, you are giving granular permission. So I'll just select object here. Then here now, these are the allowed permission. You can see, you can decide to uncheck the permission we don't want. You can uncheck permanent delete. You can uncheck immutable storage. You can uncheck create. You can uncheck add. You can just say read, write, and list. So you can even uncheck delete, because if you check delete, it means that anybody with this shared access signature will be able to delete any blob or any container or any object in that particular blob. So I will just uncheck delete. So basically, one advantage of shared access signature, we know that you can use blob storage accounts to actually serve as a repository to your website, meaning that if you can upload all the pictures that will be on your website to your blog, to your blog account, to your blog storage account in such a way that you can upload the pictures just like we uploaded pictures to our container. So if people load your website, so those pictures will display. Imagine now, let's say, God forbid, somebody have access to your shared access signature, meaning that the person will only have these rights. He will only be able to read, write, and list. But the person will not be able to delete or create. Imagine the person have the right to delete. That means the person will just go there and delete all the pictures. If your customer now go to your website and begin to load your website, they won't see any pictures because the repository where your pictures are stored is Azure Blob, and the pictures have been deleted from the blob. Why? Because someone have access to the shared access signature, and the person used that opportunity to delete everything in the blob. So automatically it happens. That's why sometimes you can see that you may be looking for some of your data, you won't see them again. So if maybe someone have access to the shared access signature, automatically you can do and undo. So now we can go down. You can decide to enable blob versioning if you like. So you can enable it. You can allow block index permission depending on you. And this is where shared access signature is good, because you can set start time and end time. So one thing we need to consider is our time zone. Me now, I'm in Nigeria. So because I'm in Nigeria, I'll just select West Central Africa. So selecting West Central Africa, I'll now select date. I can now go back and select yesterday. I can just select yesterday. Then for the expiration time, I'll select 26, which is tomorrow. So after doing all this, remember, you need to select a service. Is it blob? Is it files? Is it queues? Is it table? From our presentation, if we flash our mind back, shared access signature is supported for blob, files, queues, and table. That is why we have all of them listed here among the services. So we'll now come down. After specifying the start time and expiration time, we'll now click on allow protocols. If you like, you can use only HTTPS, or you can use HTTP and HTTPS. But note, HTTP is not secured, so it is not best practice. So best practice is to use HTTPS because it is secured. Now, you need your access key to actually sign this signature. That's why when I was explaining, rotating the access key revoke the shared access signature. So let's take, for instance, now, someone have access to this storage shared access signature, and you want to revoke access to this storage account. Once you click on this particular, once you go to access key and you rotate the key, automatically the person that have access to this storage, to this shared access signature before, will now have access to it again. Example, it's just like me. Sometimes someone asks a question, is blob data container same as global admin in M365? No. So global admin role is a role in Microsoft Entra ID that you can use to manage Microsoft Entra ID. Why blob data container is a role in Microsoft Azure that you can use to manage blob resources in Azure. So in Azure, you can use identity and access management From identity and access management, you can now create a rule. So that rule now is more or less like stating job functions. Okay, this person is into data, is into this, is into that. So if you search for data, you will see predefined roles for data. So under that rules, you can now select, okay, I want this person to be a data reader. But we know that in M365, we have global admin, exchange admin, SharePoint admin, and different administrator role like billing admin. But in Azure, we have other rules like storage account contributor, virtual machine contributor, virtual machine owner. That is role-based access control. Thank you, Steve. So now, like as I was explaining before, there are some of my neighbors. They will come and meet me that they want to connect to my Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi. Why? Because they want to subscribe to their internet. Automatically, if I connect them to my Wi-Fi, after they subscribe to their subscribe for internet, if their internet finish, they don't want to subscribe again because automatically they will connect to my Wi-Fi because I've given them my password. That is an example of shared access signature. So the only way I can now stop them from accessing my Wi-Fi by force is if I go and reset my password. And if I reset my password, all of them that are connected to my Wi-Fi, they won't be able to connect to it again. So basically, if you rotate the key, it's more or less like you changing the password of your Wi-Fi, meaning that everybody that can connect has connected to your Wi-Fi before, everybody will lose connection. That's just it. That's more or less like using rotating the key. So now I'll click on generate connection string. So after clicking on generate connection string, I have the blog service and SaaS URL right here. So now I want to access this blog. So for me to access this blog, I need a storage explorer. So let me go to the browser and show us what a storage explorer look like. Storage explorer, download, search. I'll select Azure Storage Explorer. So like the name says, Storage Explorer. So with Storage Explorer, you can use it to explore your storage account. You can use it to explore your storage account, just like this. Why is this picture? Just like this now, just like what we have here. This is a storage account. So in Storage Explorer, once you select the storage account, you can see all the files that have been uploaded. You can see everything. So it gives you a bird eye view of your storage account blobs. It gives you a better idea of your storage account, both your blobs, your files, your queue, and your table. So that's for Storage Explorer. So if you want to download Storage Explorer, so you just go to this link. Let me drop it on the chat. To download Storage Explorer. So you can use this link to download Storage Explorer. So what am I using Storage Explorer for? I want to use it to explore what I have in my storage account. So I've already downloaded Storage Explorer, so I'm just going to move it to this screen. So now this is my Storage Explorer. So I've connected some storage accounts to it. So I'm just going to detach it. So everything is going to be empty. So I'll say yes. So basically now, this is my Storage Explorer. So with this Storage Explorer now, I can use it to actually check if I can access my blob container. So if I uncheck this, I'll come back to this browser here where I'm configuring the shared access signature. So basically, let's not forget the allowed services blob. The allowed resource type is service, container, and object. And the permission is just read, write, and list. So I'll just click on copy blob SaaS URL. Once I click on copy, I will switch back to my Storage Explorer. Then I'll click on this button here that look like switch. You know that this switch now, it looks like if you want to connect this switch now, if you want to connect, you use switch or plug to connect. So you click on this plug. So once you click on this plug here, you are going to see several resources you can connect to. So now, because we are actually using shared access signature from the storage account or service. So we are going to select storage account or service here. So we'll select it. Then it will now ask me, how will you connect to the storage account? Do you want to use the connection string, account name and key? If I select account name and key and say next, it will ask me for the display name, which is the display name of the storage account, the account name, and the key. This gives me full access, but because we are actually learning how we can secure access to storage account, that is why we're using best practice on how we can securely access storage account. So we'll now click on shared access signature, then say next. Then it will ask us for the URL. That URL I copied, I'll paste it here. Then I'll click on next. Then I'll click on connect. So let's see. So now this is Niger Storage Security RG. Remember, I did not put anything like the name of the storage account. I only put the shared access signature to access it. So if I collapse block now, I'm going to see that security user I created. So we can see this particular storage. So I uploaded 2 pictures there. So if I double click on this guy, so it's going to load. So now I want us to try something. Let us try to delete this picture. Let's see if we'll be able to delete it. So if I right click on this picture now, or let me say I select the picture and I click on delete from here. Let's see if we'll be able to delete it. So what did we see? Failed to delete, insufficient credentials. But had it been I checked delete when I was configuring the shared access signature, this I will be able to delete. So this is best practice. You can use it to secure access to your log container. So now we have done using shared access signature on the storage account level. So this shared access signature now, we configured it from the storage account level. So that was why we came to storage accounts. We selected our storage accounts. So we'll just wait for the storage account to load. This is the storage account we created, Niger Security RG. Then we came down. So under the storage account, let's not forget, we clicked on shared access signature. So if you click on shared access signature from here, meaning that you are creating a storage account SaaS. A storage account SaaS. So now let's create a resource SaaS. So now this is a resource SaaS. That means I'm going to select the resource I want to configure shared access signature for. So I will select container. Then under containers now, I will now select this security user. Then under security user now, we can see that we have shared access tokens. So I will now click on shared access token. So this one now, the shared access token now, you are using it for the resource. So the resource is the container. So I'll click on shared access token. So it will now ask me, which signing method do I want to use? Account key or user delegation? So this account key now, what it means is that if I rotate the key, this person will not have access to this storage account again. But if you are using user delegation, it has nothing to do with the key. So we are going to create using these 2 methods. So we are going to confirm if you revoke the account key using user delegation, if the person will still have access to the storage account. So let's create with account key first. Then for the storage access policy, if you maybe you have created a storage access policy before, you can, if you click on this drop down, you'll be able to select it. So to create a storage access policy, if you click on access policy here, you can create. But for table storage, we are going to use this. So for the permissions now, you can say only read, but I'm just going to say read and list. So that's the permission I'm going to give. I don't want to give the person add, I don't want to give the person create, I don't want to give the person write, I don't want to give the person delete. Because by giving the person delete, it means that this person can delete anything in the container, which is not best practice. As an engineer, you're supposed to try as much as you can to prevent data loss for your organization or your client. So I will click on the start date. I'll select a later start date. Ensure that your region is set to where you are. Some of us are in UK or Canada. Select the region that is close to you. Then we'll come down here and select tomorrow. So we'll click on HTTPS, which is best practice, or HTTPS only is better. So we'll click on generate SaaS token, just like we generated on the storage account. So I will now select copy. So copying, I will now go to my storage explorer. So this is my storage explorer. I will do the same thing. I'm going to collapse this guy. So I will click on this plug here to connect. Once I click on it, now I'm not going to select storage account or services because the shared access signature was configured on the blob container itself. It was not configured on the storage account. So we use this method because the shared access signature we created was created on the storage account. That was why. But because we didn't create it on the storage account, if I select that option, it won't work. So I'll just click on this blob, then select blob container or directory. Then it will ask me which method. Do you want to sign in using OAuth or sign in or using shared access signature? I will now select shared access signature and click next. And I'll paste it here. And I'll click next. Then click connect. So we can see now that this one did not give me access to the storage account. So it only gave me access to the container object itself, which is these two images that we have here. Okay. Okay. So that's just it. That's just it. So basically, this is what we have for blob. So now all this guy have access to. This guy now have access to my storage, to my blob container, and he has access to my storage account. So I want to revoke the access. So let's go back to our storage account page so that we can revoke the access. So if I come back here now and go back to my storage account, so let's just wait for it to load. Just wait. Just select the storage account. So someone asked the question, how do we know best practice? Is there a documentation for it? Yes, there's always a documentation for how you configure most security settings in Azure resources. There's always best practice. Microsoft will tell you the best practice that you should use. And also, like Solomon says, from experience also you can know. Because as an experienced person, you know, okay, what you should configure or what you should not configure. So let me do it again. Okay, my storage account has loaded. So I'll just click on Niger Security User key, Niger Security User. Then I'll come down to this access list. So that guy now that has been enjoying access to my storage account, just like those people that are enjoying my Wi-Fi until I change the password, I'll just come here and click on rotate key. Once I rotate this key, we'll go back and see if they still have access to that storage account. Remember, when we were creating shared access signature, we selected key 1. And when we were creating the container level SaaS here, we selected key 1 also. So I'll just close this guy. Let's go back to Storage Explorer and see if we still have access. So I'll close all these tabs here. I'll close all these tabs, close all these tabs, close all these tabs, close all these tabs, and refresh. So where's the refresh button? So I'll click on view. I think refresh should be there. Okay. Let me just refresh all here. So do we see anything again? Nothing. This person doesn't have access to this one now. If I collapse it now and select the block, you see, this request is not authorized to perform the operation. If you cannot resolve this issue, you may open issue with Storage Explorer. So basically, because I've rotated the storage key, that is why. So let's take, for instance, now this is an hacker that have accessed my storage account. If I just know that this person have accessed it and I just go and rotate the key, immediately, the person don't lose access immediately. So that's just it. So I'll just detach this guy. So now, let's go and create another storage key. So if we click on container now, on that container, if we select security user, if I click on security user here, and I select to create a shared access token, remember, you can create a shared access token on the resource level. So this container is a resource, and you can use shared access signature for the storage account level. In exam, they can ask you. So those are the difference. So the difference between shared access token now is that for shared access token, you have two signing methods. you can either use account key or user delegation. But for privileged access signature, you don't have these privileges. And also, the permissions are different. So for shared access token, it only gives you permission to the resource. But for shared access signature, you can see log, files, queues, and all. So those are the things that we need to take note of. We want to go for the exam. So now we are going to be using user delegation key. So for user delegation key, this one doesn't need account key. So this one now, what it means is that even if I rotate the key, the person will still have access. So the way to revoke the access of anybody that is using user delegation key, you need to use Azure Cloud Share to revoke it. So let me just do that so that we're going to see how we can revoke access to user delegation key. So we selected read and list. So the time, select Friday, then select the tomorrow. So depending on you, let's say for instance now you are in an organization and let's say they want the person to have access for 30 days. You can just calculate how many days is 30 days from now. You give the person access and he has his access. So this time depends on the organization, what the CTO wants, or what the manager wants, or what the customer wants. So we click on generate shared access token. So now I'm getting error. So mismatch. Generating SaaS token. Okay, let's close. Let's see. Sometimes you can come up, you can meet situations like that. So let's go over it. Let's do it and list. It could be network, but let's confirm by doing it again. If it's network, then we'll know because the error was not really specific to what the issue could be. Okay, authorization permission mismatch. Perform this using this permission. This UK is not authorized to perform this. So now let's do something. Now that we're having this issue, to do that, let's click on access control. Let's grant this guy owner permission to that particular, to me now, I'm the one signed in. I want to grant myself owner permission to this container. So I'll just click on view my access. So let me see the access I have. I only have service administrator. Okay. Let me go and add a new role. So I'll just click on add role assignments here. Then from here, I select blob so that we can go specifically to blob permissions. Solomon. So this is job functions for role based for Azure resources. So if you want to give role to any resource in Azure, you can assign the roles by job functions. So let me click on search again. Let's wait for it to search. Ooh. Okay. So now I'm going to say blob data owner. So I'll just give that role. Let's try if we'll still be able to access, we'll still be able to use user delegation access. So we'll do this, then click select, then we click review and assign. So we can assign that rule. So now this blob data owner now is more or less like one of the high rules that you can give in terms of blob. So let me go and check if I'll still be able to create stored access signature. Because most times all these are just so read. Let me see read and list. So let me come here, select yesterday, come here, select tomorrow, then come here, generate authorization permission to perform this. Okay, they are still telling me authorization permission. So that means what I'm trying to do, I'm not authorized to do it. So let's still try. Let's add another, let's look for a more specific rule.
Sorry.
Yeah. You want to contribute?
Okay, yeah. I wanted to ask you if you could check the container permission. I think we configure some shared access security on the container permission. I just wanted to just say that probably we could check that if maybe the stuff is not overriding the permission and the container itself.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so let me check that. There's policies. So you should have switching the key automatically. We have revoked those policies with the ones you created. So everything will be revoked. So let's just okay. So let's not spend much time here. But basically, I just want us to know that if you are creating shared access signature using user delegation key, you don't need the signing key. But if you are using account key for shared access token, you need the key. Meaning once you revoke the key, you won't have access to the you won't have the access again. So that's for that. So now this brings us to securing access to file share. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for that. Thank you for that contribution. So at least we have seen how to use storage explorer. So sometimes if you create permission from the container level, so it could override. So basically now, because if maybe you are giving maybe the person signed in now, you're giving him a lower permission. So let me check the permission we gave here. So let me see if there is any, let me see assigned view my access. Let me see if there's any role. So I have full access to all resources in the subscription. Okay, that means so now as it is now, we are done with securing access to blob container. So let me just do a recap before we go. So for using shared access signature from the storage account level, if you select it, you are going to be able to allow services for all the Azure services, including blob files, queues, and table. And you can specify either service, container, or object, and you can check the permission that you want. But if you want the person to permanently delete, you check it. So you can do all that. So let's just close because time is not on our side. So let's just do access for file share. So basically now I'm going to use this Niger security group to create a share. So now I will come down to file share. So from file share now, you can see I have no share here. I'm going to create a new share. Then I'm going to call this share security share. So it might flag security share. So for the access tier, you can use either host code or transaction optimized, but I'll just leave it as transaction optimized. So you can do next. So for backup, automatically it is checked. So that is why if you are creating any resource in Azure, you need to make sure you don't just review and create. Sometimes, like if I created this file share now and this backup is checked, it's going to enable backup for the share and it's going to consume resources. It's going to consume my money in the subscription. So I'll just uncheck this, then click on view and create. So we'll just wait for the share to create. So now we have successfully created the file share. So because we have successfully created the file share, if we click on access control now, so each of the services in for storage account has its own access control permissions that you can use. So if I click on add role assignments now, so for blob, my search was I used blob. So for file share, I'm going to use SMB. I'm going to search using SMB. So for SMB now, if I move this, we are going to see storage data SMB share contributor. This allows for read, write, and delete access in Azure storage file. So storage file data shared elevator contributor allows for read, write, delete, and modify NTFS permission access. So that's just the rules you can give. So I'm going to give this guy share contributor. I'm going to give my share a contributor rule to this share. So I'm now going to do select. I'm going to select myself. This one here and give it the role view and assign. So basically now I've given resource. I've given permission to the resource using identity and access management. So we're going to still continue. I'm going to continue. So let's just merge. So now I'm going to review and assign. Let's see. So now the rows have been added successfully. So basically now, if I click on browse, so to get to browse, basically is once you like create the file share. So if I go back now to the storage account here, if I click on container, I'm going to see the containers I have. Then if I click on file share, I'm going to see the file shares I have. So let's just wait for the shares to load. Okay. Undo delete. When did I delete? Let me refresh again. So sometimes all this can be network. So let me just refresh the whole page. So let's just wait. Okay. Do you want to run some checks? We detect common connectivity issues. Okay, let me do something. Let me try another browser. One sec. Let me use one browser. Okay. Let me just use a private browser. So I'll just go to portal.azure.com. Enter. And I'll put my credentials. Then I'll hit send notification. I'll just wait for it to come. Okay. Let me use password because no received the notification. Okay. Select. I'm trying to use another browser. So another authentication method came in to approve. Let me see. Then if I'm unable to access it this time, then I will just change my network. Yeah. So we'll click on data storage. So let me bring this back. Under data storage, select file share. Okay, so we can see our share here. So that once I click on security share, so I'm going to get to see browse option here. So if I click on browse, I'll be able to browse the files that are in the share. So once I click on add directory, I'll be able to create a directory here. Let me just say security directory and click OK. So I've created a security directory. So this one works like our SMB, which is server message block. It works with server message block protocol. So from the authentication method now for Azure file share, if I click on the authentication method here, so I want us to see, I won't be able to switch. I wanted to, let me check. So basically, just like blog, you can upload images, you can upload pictures, you can upload videos and MP3. So let me just select anything here. Let me just upload this guy here. Then click on, let's wait for it. Let me upload it. So let me just check because, so now I've uploaded a file to this file, I've uploaded a PDF file to this file share. So with Azure storage services, such as file share and blob, you can upload non-structured data to your file share or your blob. So I wanted us to configure connections to this particular storage account. So now, from here now, let's go back so that we can start afresh, so I don't confuse us. So this is the overview of the storage accounts here. So under file share, if you followed us from the beginning, so to access file share securely, there are three methods that you can use, which is Active Directory Domain Services, which is AD, Microsoft Entra Domain Services, or Microsoft Entra KVRs. All these three methods, you can use it to securely access your file share in Azure. So none of them is configured. So I would like us to set up Microsoft Entra KVRs. Let's see how it looks like. So if I click on Setup here now, so it's going to ask me, do I want to enable Microsoft Entra KVRs? I'll say yes. Then it will ask me two options. This one is optional. It's not compulsory that you add it. So to configure directory and file level permissions through Windows File Explorer, you also need to specify domain name and domain guide for your on-premise AD. You can get this to configure using icscal. So what this means is that if you want to configure maybe permissions on your using your domain credentials, let's say for instance, you want to create security groups for departments, then give permissions to those security groups so that members of those groups, once they map that file share to their systems, they will have access to their own folder. You can use this. So in that case, we are going to specify it. So firstly, we need to log into, if we have a domain controller, we need to log into the domain controller so that we can get the domain name and the domain GUID. So let me just, I have one domain controller virtual machine open. So let me just bring it here. So basically now, this is a VM that runs ADDS. So if I go to the server manager now, and I click on the dashboard, we're going to see that it has Active Directory running here. So for me to get the domain GUID and the domain name, I'll just go to PowerShell. Since I have my Active Directory domain here, so I'll just run this command to get AD domain. So I can drop the command on the chat just to get your root domain name and the GUID. So let me look for chat. Okay. Okay. So let me just come back and run the command. So hit enter. So basically now, this is what I'll take. I'll copy to my file share. So I'll first of all copy this guy, the object GUID, Control C. Then I'll now minimize this guy. Then come here. This is the object GUID here. Then the domain name now, I'll go back there. and paste the domain name, which is domi.com. Just come back and paste the domain name here. Then click on save. So once I click on save, it means that I've configured Microsoft Entra Kerberos authentication to this file share. So basically, file share is just like our local file server that we use to create shares for different departments. So that is what file share is used for. So you create shares and configure permissions to the share. So basically now with this Microsoft Entra Kerberos enabled, we can be able to do that using both Microsoft Entra ID credentials and also our local domain controller credentials. But there is a clause to it. The device has to be joined to either the local Active Directory or Microsoft Entra domain service. So let's not forget that. So now we have configured Microsoft Entra Kerberos. So that is how to configure Microsoft Entra Kerberos. Just like on the presentation, we saw that there are three methods. You can use Active Directory domain services, you can use Microsoft Entra domain services, and you can use Microsoft Entra Kerberos. So we choose Microsoft Entra Kerberos. That's why we have configured it. So under permissions for all authenticated users and group, you can decide to enable permissions for all authenticated users and select the permission you want to give them, either SMB shared contributor or SMB file share elevated contributor or SMB file share reader, depending on what the client wants. If you're working with a client as a cloud engineer or as a security engineer, you specify all this, tell them, okay, you want for permission for all the authenticated users and group, you want everybody to have read access to the data SMB share. So you could just disable it if it is out of scope. But if it's in scope, you can specify all this. You can use any of the, you can give any of the rights. So you can just, since we have already configured Microsoft Entra Kerberos authentication, you can just click on save. So, but for me to save it, this value, I have to pick, but I don't want to save it. So I'll just click on, I'll just close this guy. So now that we have created a share, so let's see how we can connect to our share. So if we want to connect to this share now, you open the share. Then from the share here, just like you connect to a virtual machine, you click on connect. Once you click on connect, you can connect, you can, just like we're explaining in the slide, so you can mount a file share on a Linux machine. You can mount a file share on a Mac OS machine and also a Windows machine. So let's just mount it. So I'm going to change this drive later. It must not be Z because I already have a drive that I mapped using Z. So I'll select U. Under the authentication method now, because I've configured Microsoft Kerberos authentication, that was why I have Active Directory or Microsoft Entra. So, but for us to use this, you can see an identity-based access is needed. So basically, there are things that you must do for you to be able to use that particular configuration. So now, as it is, after setting it up, we can actually just note that because we have configured Kerberos authentication, that is how under the authentication method, you can use Active Directory or Microsoft Domain Services. So now let's say, for instance, now, but it's already telling us here that identity-based access is not configured for this storage account, but so we'll just take note of that. But maybe we just need to refresh the browser because that was what we configured, which is from the file share level itself. But we'll look at how to configure that. So now, this particular permission we did, which is from the file share itself. So if I go back to the share, I want us to see the share. Let me come back to storage account. Then go back to the storage account itself. Collapse this guy. Come to share. So from here now, we can see that we configured identity-based authentication. So normally, it creates an app registration in Microsoft Entra ID. and we need to give that application some permissions. So we'll just go to Microsoft Entra ID. Since Microsoft Entra ID is a managed services on Azure, so we'll just click on Microsoft Entra ID by just searching for Microsoft Entra ID on the browser, on the search, or better still, you can go to Microsoft Entra ID using the URL itself. So if you click on manage now, you will see everything you can do in terms of Microsoft Entra ID. You can manage users, you can manage groups, and you can manage external identities. So let's just go back. So what our concern here is app registration. So if I click on app registration now, own app. So I don't own any app. So if I click on all apps, I'm going to see all the applications we created. So if I move this guy like this now, we are going to see that an app registration was created for Niger Storage Security Group. I remember when Steve was taking secure access to application, we talked about application registration. So basically now, if you click on manage, you can see where you can allow permission to this particular application. So if I click on API permission now, so all I just need to do here is to grant admin consent to that particular application that was created after I configured Microsoft Entra Kerberos authentication. So I'll just click on grant admin consent and I'll say yes. So why are we doing this? Because the authentication is two ways. You can either be authenticated using Microsoft Entra ID or using domain controller. So if you are using Microsoft Entra ID for authentication, you have to do this. You need to grant admin consent to the app registration so that if any user tries to log in, the person we have, this user read now is a delegated kind of access. So you can see that application has been If I refresh this page, because I've already granted the admin consent, so we can see that it has been granted. So basically, each user now have right to this app registration, and this app registration is tied to the identity method we selected for our file share. So right now, I'll go back to the file share. So let me go back to the file share. Okay, so there's a sandbox. I'm going to drop a link on the chat that you can practice creating a storage account with a sandbox. So thank you for that question, Akin. So let me just go back to the storage account. So if I select the storage account we created, we can come down and select file share. So now this storage account now that we have, that this file share now that we have created, so we can connect it to a Windows PC. So let me just connect it to a Windows PC. So, but basically to connect it to a Windows PC, let's not forget, if you are using Microsoft Entra, you can see now that that error is no longer there. If you are using Microsoft Entra or Active Directory, basically that system has to either be joined to the Active Directory domain or Microsoft Entra ID domain. So it has to join either any of the directories. So now, if you select show script, this is the script you just copy and run on the SMB client, which is the system that you want to access this file share. But for our own case, let's just use storage account key, because for me to meet that criteria, there are some things I need to pay for, which for now, I'm not ready to pay for that for now. So let me just do that. So now to access that particular file share that we just created, so I'll use PowerShell ISC. So I'll just open PowerShell ISC. So I don't want to use this one. So I want to use PowerShell ISC. So I can have access to both the script interface and the graphical user interface. So I will just click on add, then I'll paste the script I copied. So this is the the scripts now I copied from the file share. Because if you want to mount a file share to any system, you need to click on the file share, then you select any of the system you want to mount it. If it's Linux, you select Linux. If it's Mac, you select Mac. If it's Windows, you select Windows. So as it is now, you will now copy the link. So that was what I did. So I want to mount it on this Windows server. So I'll just click on play. Let's see if it's going to go. We are going to get an error. So credential added successfully. So now if I come to my file explorer, file explorer, if I click on this PC, I have two storage accounts. This one is security share. So it's already here. So basically now, if I have all the prerequisites for configuring the ACI, which is access control, I can just select it, right click on this directory now, create, maybe assign permissions to this group now using security group, so that anybody in that security group can have access to this security directory and see the files that are there. So I'll just click on close. So basically now we have done for the for file share, securing access to file share. So now let's look at data protection in storage account. So basically now, for data protection in storage account, if you come back to your storage account and you select the storage account you created, on the overview page, I want to show us something. So let me minimize this guy. So if you scroll down on the overview page, we can see under LOB services, we can see LOB soft delete, we can see container soft delete, we can see versioning, and we can see different settings. So if I select this blob soft delete now, if I select it, it's going to take me to data protection under the server. So here now, if you enable blob soft delete, it means that if somebody deletes any file in the blob, it will be retained for 7 days. So best practice, it depends on the organization. Some people can say 30 days, and the more you keep it, the more money you pay. So that is why sometimes you have to be intentional with what you pick. Yeah. So let's just leave it at, let's say 10 days. Then for container itself, you can say, let's say 10 days also. So you can do enable permanent delete for soft delete items. So if you like, you can enable permanent delete for soft delete items. But basically this one, before you enable it, you need to make sure you like, maybe it's really what the client wants before you enable it. Why? For tracking, just like we have in OneDrive, whereby you can do versioning. If maybe once you make changes to any document, create a new version, you make changes, it create a new version, you make changes, it create a new version. You can also do that on storage account for data protection, so that in case somebody make modification to the storage account itself, you can actually go back to the version history and change it. So these are data management. So if you come down now, you can enable block change feeds if you like. What it means is that changes made to the block, you can keep track of change and modification. This is very important in enterprise environment because people can easily deny, no, be me. Who did this? It's not me. I'm not the one. Who deleted this? Maybe an organization that have like, let's say 40 people or 40 admin. Nobody will agree. And if nobody agrees, it means that the punishment will be for everybody, which is not fair. So that is why sometimes enabling versioning for blocks is enabling blockchain fields is very important because it helps you to know who did this, who made this modification, who deleted this, who did this. So for immutability I talked about, after creating a storage account, there are some things you can't change. You can configure immutability after creating a storage account. So because of this, we are going to create another storage account so that we can see how we can configure immutability for storage account. So now as it is here, I'll just click on I'll click on save so that at least I can save all these data protection settings for my storage account, so that in case maybe somebody just mistakenly, maybe because the person did wrong and they asked the person to leave the organization, the person just come and delete everything, and the person is not happy. Yes, I've deleted it. So with all this, everything will still be in the back end. You can always go there and recover them. And also here you can enable Azure backup for blog, but anything backup is money. So that is why if you want to enable backup, the organization needs to put that in their budget so that at least they don't go and spend money on things they are not supposed to spend money on. So those are the things. So we're going to confirm if it has saved. Okay, updated successfully. So we close. So the next thing we are going to do now is let's check redundancy. So items have not been saved. Okay, thought it has saved. Let me go back now. Okay. So for redundancy now, we can see that because we selected read access geo redundant storage, we have our data in two regions, which is West Europe and North Europe. So basically now, this is a good redundant option in case of failover. Maybe if one region goes down, or maybe for any reason, we know that we can always access our storage account. So we can see the reason why we say storage account is actually like is highly available, because if it depends on the redundancy option you select. If we collapse this now, we have geo redundant storage and local redundant storage. This local redundant storage now, if you select it, your data will be only on one region, it won't be on two regions. But with read access geo redundant storage, you have your data on two regions. So as so if you want to do object replication, maybe replication is good in such a way that you just like for AD now, if you have primary domain controller and secondary domain controller, changes are being replicated. Should in case if one domain controller goes down, you know that users can continue to work. That's for object replication. So you can also do that in storage account. So if you want to do that, we are going to create replication rules so that you can replication can be going on between two storage accounts at the same time. So as they are making any changes from in the storage account, the changes is going to the other storage account. So now let's look at how we can enable immutability for storage account. So basically, let's just practice solve delete. So remember when we were explaining, we talked about, although time is not our friend. So time is not our friend. Okay, so now we have been able to explore how we can have secure access to containers, secure access to files, and also data management in storage accounts. So now the next thing we are going to look at is creating customer managed keys and all. So in doing that, since we have already created the storage account, we're going to create another one. So, and that will be the last thing we are going to do for today, then we close. So I'll just come here, click on storage account so I can create a new storage account. So I'll just create, then I'll create it under this Niger security RG so that when we are done, I'll just delete the resource group and everything will be gone. I'll come here and give my storage account a name. Let's say storage 456 910. Oh, so let's see if the name has been used. So it has not been used. So due to error, validation could not complete, contact support. All these are just network issues. Okay, let me see. Let me just add something to this name. Let me see, storage Steve 124. So now basically what I want to show us is in creating your storage account, you can select the redundancy option. You can choose local, zone, or geo. So if we are going for local now, we can just select local. So let me change the resource, the location. Let me use East US. So basically now, if we go to encryption, because we talked about server-side encryption and infrastructure encryption. So I want to show us how we can use encryption. So here now we have two encryption types. We have Microsoft managed encryption and we have customer managed encryption. Encrypting your storage account, if you select data protection, so from data protection here, you could also specify how many days you want your block to be retained. If you want it to be 30 days, you put it here during the creation of the storage account, 30, 30. So you could do that. And also, this is where you enable immutability. So if you check it here, because it was not checked, that was why it did not work when we that was why it was graded when we're actually trying to enable it in the other storage account. So it's already telling us that version level vulnerability support versioning for blobs. So I need to enable versioning for blobs. So if I don't enable versioning for blobs, I won't be able to use version level immutability support. So what this immutability means is that it can change and it allows you to set time-based retention policy on account level. So you can set time-based retention policy like, okay, you should retain the settings for 30 days. Then it will now create a copy. It won't change the previous data. It will just maybe rewrite in case maybe there's any changes to it. So that's immutability. So you can keep all logs. So that's for data protection. Then if we come to networking, so for networking now, this is also a way you can secure access to storage account. So you can say enable public access from all network, meaning that all network can access the storage account. But if you say enable public access from selected virtual network, it means that if that particular system or user is not on the network you selected here, that means the person will not be able to access the storage account. So that's a way of maybe making your storage account hardened in such a way that before somebody will even have access to your storage account, one, he has to get on the network. Then you will now configure shared access signature again to give only read and write so that the person will not be able to, even if the person have access to the storage account, maybe credentials leaked, they won't still be able to have access to delete any file in your block. So let's go to encryption. So for encryption now, by default, customer
Mr.
Microsoft.
Emmanuel, can you help us round up? That
Okay,
means
okay,
yes.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'll soon round up. So I'm rounding up here. So basically, customer managed encryption. Now, this is where you can now bring your own key, just like we're explaining the other time. So these are the things you need. So you need a key vault to store your key. Then you also, so if you are using managed HTML, you select it, which is maybe the services that is storing your key. But if you're using Azure Key Vault, you can now select your key vault here. So basically, this is how you can encrypt your storage account. So if you're using infrastructure, if you enable infrastructure encryption now, that means you are doing two-way encryption. So that's just what it means. So I think I'm done for today. So thank you everyone. I don't know, does anybody have any question before we go? Or we call it an evening?
I put a question on the chat.
Thank you.
Object replication, does it attract extra budget?
Yes, it attracts extra budget. Yes, it attracts.
Oh,
It
okay,
attracts extra budget. Yeah.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Then this is you place for us now for the sandbox.
Okay, the sandbox. Okay.
Where we can
Let me
practice.
just give
Where
you
we can
let me give you that. Let me drop it before we go. So that you can see how you can treat. Okay. So I'm dropping it.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. This was a
Is it on the
very
chat or
insightful
on the
session.
platform?
On the chat. On the chat.
Yeah, on the chat.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Steve.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have another question. Okay, it
Okay.
has been answered already. Okay, so
I have
Solomon
a
asked a question.
question.
He said that is it not consuming space like the file share? He said that is it not consuming space in your hard disk since it is, or since it is cloud based, it has no size on the hard disk.
Yeah, I like that question. That's a very inquisitive question. A very good one. So, is it not consuming space in your hard disk since it is cloud-based? It has no size on the hard disk. So basically, it's cloud-based. So it has nothing to do with your hard disk. So basically, it's there. So you can add any file to it. Let me go back to the file share again. So as it is here now, if I maximize my remote desktop and I click on File Explorer, if I click on this PC, this is it. So it's a network location. So it has nothing to do with my hard drive here. So it will just show as a network location here like this, nothing more. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Mr. Solomon.
Yes, you have. I can see it now. I didn't take notice of that network location before. I've seen it. Thank you.
I understand. You are welcome, boss. Okay. Does anybody have any other thing to add? Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining.
All right. It was a very, very insightful session. I know that if we had left you with, I mean, if time was our friend, you'd have gone beyond for us and showed us the other intricate part of the storage account. And I'm sure, and everyone can agree with me that this session has been very, very insightful. We've learned a lot from coming from the storage account settings, looked at storage, the SAS key, looked at access control, we entered the container level. We also looked at the Azure Storage Explorer, which helps us to mount our containers and a lot more. And it has been a very, very impactful section. And really, I'm sure that if we had more time, we would have drawn a lot more from your well of knowledge and experience. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. We really appreciate this session. And I don't think there's any other question. If we have any other question, even after this, the video recording will be made available after the session. Once we are done with the call, we get the recording and then we upload it to our YouTube channel. So if you have not yet, please kindly subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can always stay updated to every new recording that we bring from our training. And yes, the slide as well will be sent to the group. For those of us that were asking for the slide, it will be sent to the group. So if you've not joined the group, we sent Solomon sent the link earlier, but I can just recopy and paste for those joining after that time. So please do well to join the group so that you can get every necessary resource for the training. And one more thing before we close, or before we call this a close, which is that regarding storage security, I also around February created a cloud security project which discussed give beginners walkthrough on how to create and secure the storage account, right? So I'm going to paste that in the comment section so for those of us that have access to the portal, we can explore this project to create and secure a storage account, and also talks about the Azure Storage Explorer on how to set it up and how to use it as well. So it's very, very detailed and very, very helpful for those of us that want to also learn more about the storage security. So without any further ado, Mr. Emmanuel, is there anything that I forget to add?
No, it's fine. It's fine. So we can just end the section.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. See you in our next meetup. Thank you so much, Michael, Saeed, Solomon.
Yeah,
I really
thank you.
appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Sylvester. Thank you, Solomon.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay.
And Josh, thank you also.